Hey, good afternoon to you. It's now 5:06 News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Mark Hemingway talks to us about Kamala's campaign and how they're trying to rig the social media conversations around their failures. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL.
The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters, President Biden said last night of his fellow Americans, talking about Trump supporters. You see, the Trump campaign today, in addition to condemning Joe Biden's out-of-control rhetoric, they released a statement pointing to the fact that, the price of garbage is up 18.5% under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. The prices that Americans pay for garbage collection have jumped 18.5% since Joe Biden and Kamala Harris entered the White House. According to data from the U.S. Department of Labor, the Consumer Price Index for water, sewage, and garbage collection was up 4.75% in September compared with just 1 year earlier. Trash collection inflation peaked at a year-over-year rate of 5.8% in June of last year. So on the issue of garbage, even getting rid of your too expensive stuff is now more expensive. Breitbart covering the news there, the Trump campaign sharing that. The price of garbage is up 18.5% under Biden-Harris. So while we're on the theme, yes, even that is more expensive. It is not free to get rid of things. Let's see here. John is calling in from Fairfax, now line 2. John, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Colonnese Show.
Hey, that's a great show as always. I'm in the heart of Blue Land. But strangely enough, I am seeing Trump stands up along the roads, and it's wonderful to see. Right off of Route 123, going north and south. It's good to see. It's very, very encouraging. But the other thing I'm going to say to you, too, in terms of the African-American enthusiasm, as an African-American, my family has been in Virginia since 1876. We got the receipts on that, and it's been wonderful. Wonderful to have that kind of history in place where we were once denied the vote, but now we have that great opportunity over so many years now and to really cast that vote when it counts. So I'm just going to encourage my fellow African Americans to go out there and go Trump. This will make the difference. I think the percentages are in our favor, and I think our vote has never counted so much until now.
It's interesting, John, that you bring this up, and I'm glad you framed it that way. The history in the United States is, at one point, black people were treated as less than human and didn't even have the voting franchise. And now we're at a point where the black vote, in many ways, actually determines the outcome of the elections in the United States of America.
That's right. That's exactly right. And we're seeing so much enthusiasm. And it's not being covered here in the Northern Virginia area because I think for lots of reasons. But we're seeing it in national media. We're seeing that enthusiasm increase, but certainly in the heart of where I live anyways, there's not a lot of coverage going in that direction.
Yeah.
But I think it's here.
What do you think, John? I appreciate this call, and I don't expect you to be a representative of all black people everywhere, first and foremost.
No, not at all. Very diverse community.
Yes, for sure. But do you have a sense of why young black men seem so drawn to Trump? Are they one of my impressions is that they're not weighed down by all of the propaganda baggage that maybe some older people are.
I think that the impact of social media has played a critical part in all of that. We now have the benefit, right, of diversity of opinions, diversity of social media, not just the traditional sources anymore. And I think because of our young folks who are so much more technologically adept than I ever will be, they have an opportunity to really make some decisions upon their own based on their own research. And I got a receipt on that because my oldest son is 24 years old, and he knows more about social media than I ever will. And he can bring in information when he and I are having a discussion that I hadn't even thought about a source that he's looking into.
Yeah, what does he think of all of
social
this?
media? My point. You know, I don't go in a direction that I go, but I know he is very aware of the divergence of issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I just say, go to the polls and vote.
Yep.
You know, I'm a third-generation military guy, okay? So not only do I have the receipts for that, but I tell him all the time, son, no matter which direction you vote, as long as you vote, because your family has the receipts on voting, on ensuring that we defend that right.
Yeah.
You see where I'm going?
I see exactly where you're going.
And that's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. I don't try to pursue him one way or the other. He's a good, sharp young man. He's a lot smarter than I ever will be. He takes after his mother. And I'll have to say for sure, just go vote, because I defended that right in my service.
It's such a big thing, and you're right about. Thank you for your service, and that's the key, right? Even with people you disagree with, I speak to young lefty people, and I say, look, it's fine. We don't have to agree. Here's what I'm here to tell you. At the very least, train that intellect that I know you have in your head on using some skepticism. All of that skepticism you're directing at me, you should direct at power centers. Anybody who wants to rob you of liberty, you should be aiming your skepticism at them, and think really clearly about what they're up to. Yeah. Hey, John.
He's a young man. He's a young man. So I think as he gets more life experiences, because I've raised two children, and I'm almost 60 years old, the issues of the economy become a little bit of different conversation as you get older,
for sure.
Especially when you start to collect family and kids and all those things that we hope and pray he's able to do as he gets a little older.
Having a child is a radicalizing experience, a very radicalizing experience, in such a good way. John, thank you. I really appreciate that call. Thank you very much.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Great call.
That's Bye-bye. John in Fairfax calling in. Let me go to Joe in Woodbridge on line 5. Joe, good afternoon to you, sir. You're on the Vince Colonnade Show.
Hey, Vince. Great show as usual. Always good to talk to you.
Thank you,
Hey, just real quick on the relationship between Trump and young black men. You know, I work with a lot of young black men, and I feel like a lot of it is the fact that they see, even though Trump is white and older and rich, they see a man who has been persecuted and unwrongly gone after by the Justice Department and by the FBI, and they could relate to that. And now they see Trump getting shot at and actually shot. And it's the young African-American male population that is also suffering the most from gun violence, in the cities. So I see that as being partly a correlation.
It could be a catalyst. And one of the other ways to think about it is you maybe don't have to grow up in a rough neighborhood. You just see that Trump presents himself in a non-phony way all the time. He's always the same guy. He doesn't pretend to be something he's not, unlike Kamala, who's constantly pretending that she's a shapeshifter. She's always pretending to be something else. You can sniff that out in a second. And Trump has legitimate toughness. I think, especially after he got shot on July 13th, I think a lot of guys that I know looked at that and they go, whoa, that guy, I mean, you never really knew, but the courage under fire, when you see that happen, you're like, that's legitimately impressive.
Yep. Yeah, but the point I wanted to make was I think Virginia is in play, and I think in these closing days the case needs to be made to get the undecided women out there, the white middle-class suburban moms and the black women who believe that abortion is their number one issue. And I recently had a conversation with my daughter-in-law who held abortion as the major issue and was going to vote for Harris. And I changed her mind, and I did it just talking to her intelligently, respectfully, because I respect women. And I told her, first of all, that I respected, her position, that she thought that was the most important thing to vote on. I didn't agree with it, but I explained to her that there are more important issues at stake. And the number one issue as a mother and as the mother of my grandchildren is that she has a God-given duty to protect her children. And I explained to her that when she votes for Kamala Harris, she's just not voting for a woman or a black woman. She's voting for the policies of the Democrat Party that negatively affect her children, policies such as confusing her young children in the public schools about their sexuality, policies such as allowing young men and men into women's locker rooms, which is disgusting and an invasion of privacy. Policies such as allowing men to play women's sports in the schools and in professional sports, which puts women and our daughters in danger. And so the point I was trying to make to her was that abortions is important, but Donald Trump is not. Donald Trump sent it back to the states, and each state is handling abortion as they see fit. And Donald Trump is not a threat to abortion. Donald Trump, in fact, has come out and said he will not sign anything into federal legislation banning abortion. And by the end of the conversation, by explaining to her that the policies of the Democrats are actually harming my grandchildren and harming her children in the public schools, she understood that was her main duty in life, which was to protect her children. And so I just wanted to pass that on. And to black women, I would say this. I have the utmost respect for black women. I work with a lot of them. They're single moms, and I cannot believe how they can work full-time and still be good moms. But the thing I would say to black women is, and please do the research, don't believe me, African Americans only make up 14 to 15% of the population today. And the reason is because white progressive Democrats from the early 1900s, like Margaret Sanger, invented eugenics and decided that they were going to set up abortion clinics in poor neighborhoods and reduce the population of the poor and the minorities. And for the past 100 years, white Democrats have been conducting a psyops operation on black women, convincing them that killing their babies is reproductive health, convincing them that killing their beautiful black innocent babies is health care. And so I want to speak to black women, and I beg you, and I beseech thee with all my heart and soul to do the research. You're voting for a political party in the Democrats that have systematically imprisoned your men, have injected them with diseases over the years, and have convinced you basically to commit genocide against millions of black babies over the past 100 years. Please think about that before you cast your vote for a Democrat this year.
Joe, you really hit it all, didn't you? You covered everything, and I love what you were saying about, first of all, with your daughter-in-law. That's a huge thing because when we talk about how do we reach out to women, especially to get them on board with President Trump, just emphasizing the role that safety plays. That's appealing to all voters, but women take that very seriously, especially for their children. And you left me with this thought, Joe, if I could summarize everything you just said, and which is this: don't vote for Kamala to destroy the children you don't have. Vote for Trump to protect the children you do have. And
exactly,
Joe, I think you're just wonderful, and I'm so grateful you called in, Joe. Thank you.
God bless you, Vince.
That's Joe in Woodbridge, working inside of his family to change minds, saying, you've got kids. You want to protect them? Do the right thing. Good for him. Wait a second. Bill Clinton, are they all campaigning for Trump? Is that what's happening? Bill Clinton, like Joe Biden, has been a disaster for Kamala on the campaign trail. Apparently, just a moment ago in Michigan, he said the economy was better under Donald Trump. Take a listen.
I don't think it's right to say that people have to vote for Donald Trump because the economy was better there. I don't believe that.
I don't think it's right to say that that's the only reason they've got to vote for Trump, because the economy was better. What a world. I saw some of the Obama, all the Obama bros, they have podcasts. All the guys who used to work in the Obama White House, they do podcasts now. That's their life. I'm sure they're paid handsomely for it. And they were complaining that this seems like a stupid strategy for Kamala Harris to be accusing Trump of being a fascist in the final week. The Nazi stuff, the fascist stuff, the calling his supporters garbage. They said, how's that going to convince anybody who's concerned about the cost of living? Like, if you're a voter who's not fully invested in this race, you're a part of that small sliver of Americans who are decisive yet undecided. What is this going to do to convince you to support Kamala? Oh, really? Trump's Hitler? Where have I heard that before? Oh, he's a Nazi, he's a fascist? That's okay. What about the cost of living? What about making things better for me and my family? And one of the things the Obama bros were sad about is that people might just look back at the Trump era and be like, actually, I was better then. And so Kamala's got to do something. to shake them out of that, to tell them what she's going to do materially for their lives. She's incapable of it. We've seen her in friendly interviews. We've seen her in like 1 or 2 adversarial interviews, and every single time she falls flat on her face. She's incapable of delivering a positive vision, which is why we've ended up here. It's a short campaign for her, 3 months or so? And the end of it is her saying that Trump is Hitler. Yeah, that's usually a sign that you've lost the debate, isn't it? She's like a social media goof. That's when you know you've lost the debate. You just start screaming, Hitler, Hitler, Hitler. You know who else thought that? Hitler thought that. Hitler drank water. Hitler breathed air. Hitler thought the sky was blue. I think you're losing, sweetheart. I hope so, anyway. Coming up, Mark Hemingway with Real Clear Investigations will join us next. We'll talk about how Kamala Harris's campaign is trying to rig social media to pretend that people support her. Hey, good afternoon to you. It is now 5:35. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. We're just 6 days away from Election Day in this election season 2024. And Kamala Harris has so little authentic support that her campaign is attempting to manufacture it on social media. For more on this very unsurprising but important story, Mark Hemingway is here. He's a senior writer at Real Clear Investigations, and he joins us now. Hello, Mark.
Hey, glad to be back.
Okay, so what's going on with Elon Musk's platform X, formerly Twitter, and Kamala Harris's campaign?
Okay, so there's a very popular Twitter account called Reddit Lies, and this guy is like a serious internet researcher. And he discovered that the Harris-Walz campaign was running this sort of secret Discord server. Discord's like a popular app where you can sort of create communities that work together.
Yeah.
And what they were doing is they were corralling all of these campaign volunteers, and they're using these volunteers to swarm online platforms and manipulate them. So in the case of Twitter or X, what they're doing is X is this community notes feature where if someone tweets out information that's false or wrong, people can try and correct that, put a community note on that post, and people will vote up and down on whether it's true. And if it gets enough votes, that note will be appended to the post, correcting the post. And what the Kamala Harris campaign was doing was they were tweeting out things that were like outrageously wrong. I mean, even CNN's fact checker, which famously hates Trump, wrote an entire column attacking the campaign for all of the falsehoods they've been putting out on their Twitter accounts. But somehow, even though these falsehoods were even being called out by CNN, there was never any community notes correcting them appended to it. And the reason why we now know is that in this Discord server, employees of the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, were directing these hordes of Kamala Harris volunteers to go online and vote down all these community notes that were accurately pointing out that the campaign is lying. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. They were doing all sorts of other online manipulation.
Yeah, so this account, Reddit Lies, I just read a piece from Reddit Lies in the Federalist this week. It's an anonymous account, but this guy has been able to infiltrate this Discord server where the Kamala Harris campaign is actively engaged in what we know online is the online term is brigading, where you create this artificial effort to make it look like there's an authentic response to things on the internet. And the Kamala Harris campaign has an army of people who are dedicated to manipulating reality.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's really amazing because he came back. He has all the receipts. If you go and look at his reporting on this, you've got all these just amazing screenshots that are just laying it all out. I mean, there's no hiding behind what they're doing. I mean, they're deliberately putting out disinformation and propaganda on all of these sites, and it is incredibly deceptive. And it's not just a matter of just being deceptive. I mean, I guess technically it's not illegal to lie to the public, but they certainly are violating the terms of service of all of these websites. And obviously, if there were a Republican campaign or the Trump campaign that were directly telling their volunteers to go out there and put misinformation all over the internet or things that weren't true,
yes,
you better believe that people would be all over this story and it would be leading cable news for days.
Yeah, that's for sure. So I saw Elon Musk apparently responded with some interest in this today, and your wife, Molly Hemingway, tweeted at him, grateful that he's taking a look at this. Do you think that Elon might get in the way of their effort to rig the system?
Well, I think just the fact that the whole Discord server has been exposed is going to, have a huge impact on what they're doing. But yeah, certainly, I'm sure that Elon is, he says he's looking into it, and I'm sure, he's very proud of the community notes feature. And certainly the community notes feature where people vote on whether stuff is true rather than having just the admins at X, randomly kick people off the internet that they decide is, false, which is what was going on in the last election to, their everlasting shame, is a better system. But, obviously it's being gamed, and I hope that Elon can have his engineers and everything, a lot of talented people over there, take a look at how they can keep this feature from being overwhelmed this way.
And I was just talking to a friend in conservative media today about this, but I love the community notes feature because it democratized fact-checking. So the fact-checking apparatus, such that it is in the United States, is mostly controlled by an elite cabal of legacy media outlets who are deciding what is allowed to get around social media and what's not. And by allowing just individual American citizens, anybody who's on X, to contribute, and then people can vote, they can look at it, they can authenticate it, they can kick the tires. It's a good system, Mark. And you have Kamala Harris and her campaign, her official campaign, going out of the way to subvert it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's exactly what's going on. And I would also like to add that, this is part two of a three-part report. That, there's another report dropping tomorrow, and the report that dropped the first day, showed how they were, having incredible success manipulating the social media platform Reddit. And so they're doing this across the board. I mean, this is, a really widespread effort that a lot of thought and coordination has gone into. And it's really, really appalling.
I talked about this yesterday, too, that it struck me as jarring that 1 out of every 8 posts that are popular on the politics subreddit, which is a very active community, 1 out of every 8 of their popular posts were actually written by and juiced by the Kamala Harris campaign. So this is supposed to be a place where you have authentic conversations about politics. And sure, there's lots of left-wing people there. They're allowed to be left-wing. But the Kamala Harris campaign is doing this, and they're not disclosing this. In political advertising, you've got to say that you're with the Kamala campaign at the end. On Reddit, they're being very deceptive, Mark.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And what's really amazing is that the moderators of Reddit are so left-wing that they've been repeatedly banning anyone who tries to attempt to post the link to the Federalist story, pointing out that Reddit is being manipulated. The moderators of our politics won't let people point out that their own forum is being manipulated. I mean, it's really out of control. I think that people. One of the encouraging things though is I think the story of this election. If you look at the importance of the Rogan interview and all these other things that traditional media are becoming less and less relevant, and these alternative forms of media are becoming more and more relevant. And I think that alternative media like X, for instance, has better safeguards against this kind of stuff. But you still have, and the legacy media obviously has proven that they're willing to pump out false information on COVID, everything. But I think with this is encouraging that we're heading in this direction.
I think you're right. I think it's headed in the right direction. But thank God Elon owns X. That's a huge piece of this because this week we saw, you mentioned the Joe Rogan interview. Google suddenly, in a big mistake, they're telling everybody it's a mistake. It was an algorithm mistake. On YouTube, it was impossible to simply search for Joe Rogan, Donald Trump, and find his interview this week. There was a period of like 24 hours where that interview you couldn't find it through a conventional search. You had to really go out of your way to Joe Rogan's channel, to click to his videos, to find the actual interview. And Google has said, oh, that was just a mistake. And we've seen a lot of these mistakes, Mark Hemingway, and it turns out they usually happen just ahead of elections, and they all go in the same direction. What am I to make of that?
Yeah, well, obviously, I mean, big tech is a huge issue. I mean, Facebook and Google have been putting their thumb on the scale forever. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you can cite chapter and verse. I mean, I think it was the University of North Carolina that did this amazing study that showed that that the percentage of Democratic fundraising emails that got through Gmail spam filters was unbelievably higher than Republican fundraising emails. And I'm sure that just doesn't happen by accident. and you could even quantify the staggering amount of money the Republicans were losing in terms of fundraising because of this. That's not an accident. I have a feeling that some engineer somewhere is doing that. But it's also true that so much of what happens in these networks rely on these, social, metrics in terms of, people clicking like buttons and stuff like that. And
yes.
that, provides all kinds of opportunities here for malign actors, foreign intelligence, you name it, to come in and do these, artificial astroturfing campaigns.
Yes.
And, make things appear artificially more popular than they are.
And these are big organizations, these tech companies, populated by a lot of left-wing activists, obviously. Imagine the temptation that some of them must feel. If there's a formula used to decide which fundraising emails make it through to an inbox and which ones don't, and you lean ever so slightly on the algorithm to change just how often those emails are being delivered, you can really distort an entire election very easily.
Yep, that's exactly right. In fact, in one of our pieces on how Reddit is being manipulated, there's a quote from one of the top execs at Reddit that talks about how, he really feels that a platform like Reddit could, in fact, be used to manipulate an election. I mean, they're openly talking about this possibility. And, when you look at some of the, political stances of the people that are running these kinds of networks, you do wonder. And that's not a healthy place to be.
Yeah. What do you make of, so right now, one of the things I've heard President Trump mention on the campaign trail is he's received phone calls from some of the executives of these big tech companies, including Sundar Pichai at Google. Like, clearly they're trying to curry some favor with him. Jeff Bezos, very infamously this week, says, we're not endorsing anybody. We're getting out of the endorsement business because, obviously he's trying to protect all sorts of government contracts that he has with the federal government. What do you make of their behavior, both in forms of censorship here, but in public, the CEOs saying they can work with anybody, including Trump?
Well, I think there's two ways to look at it. I mean, the first way is the one that you rightly pointed out. I mean, a lot of these big companies have massive government contracts, and they're worried about retaliation, and they see a vibe shift, as it were, in terms of even if Trump loses, they're going to have to deal with a lot more sort of overt and organized resistance to what they're trying to do because, people have, now recognize that, they're clearly putting their thumb on the scale. The second way of looking at it is they've been putting their thumb on the scale for so long that they realize that they're taking such a credibility hit that it's going to be bad for their business long term, and they just can't keep doing that. I think, Bezos gets a little bit of an unfair rap, and to some extent, I'm sure his business interests were, in his mind when he made that decision. But if you look at the trajectory of the Washington Post, which has lost half its audience, and lost $77 million last year, he fundamentally recognizes that credibility might be the foremost issue for the paper, and letting the paper continue to operate as a hysterical partisan outlet is, just unsustainable, and it can't happen.
Right. If you're in the truth-telling business, it turns out integrity is important. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, something like that.
Well, then that would be an improvement. That'd be a vast improvement over, like pushing for Democrats to have power permanently at all costs, regardless of what kind of lies you have to tell. So hopefully it's a sea change. Although apparently they're going through a massive civil war at the Washington Post right now, and it couldn't happen to a better place, honestly. Mark Hemingway, thank you very much from Real Clear Investigations for all your excellent work and your time today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
That's the excellent Mark Hemingway. Arnold Schwarzenegger announced today, the governor, he's endorsing Kamala. Of course. It's because of his affinity for Doug Emhoff's lifestyle. He says he's sharing it with all of you, this endorsement, because I think there are a lot of you who feel like I do. You don't recognize our country and your right to be furious. What? Okay, then let's turn the page, Arnold. Shouldn't we be getting rid of the people who made it awful? Guess who endorsed Trump today? Did you see this news? Buzz Aldrin, the famous astronaut, Buzz Aldrin, endorsed Trump today. It was a big endorsement. Very cool. He's very proudly doing it. He says a half century ago, it was an honor to serve his country in the effort to put a human being on the moon. I'm proud of what we accomplished then, and I've dedicated my life to the pursuit of an enduring human presence in space. And then he says, over time, I've seen our government's approach to space wax and wane. Oh, I see what he did there. It's like the moon, wax and wane. But under the first Trump administration, I was impressed to see how human space exploration was elevated as a policy of high importance again. Under President Trump's first term, America saw a revitalized interest in space, and his administration reignited national efforts to get back to the moon and push on to Mars. The Trump administration also reinstituted the National Space Council, and our nation's defense was enhanced with the creation of the U.S. Space Force. And he just goes on talking about how this is so great. He loves this vision for America. And he says, for me, the future of our country, to meet enormous challenges and for the proven policy accomplishments above, I believe we're best served by voting for Donald Trump. I wholeheartedly endorse him for President of the United States. Godspeed, President Trump, and God bless the United States of America. There are a bunch of people in the comments, lefties, who are angry. They thought Buzz Aldrin was on their side. I don't know why. Like, Buzz Aldrin is a great American, and he's endorsed President Trump, so that's cool. And then I see in his comments, you know who else is in there? From October Sky fame, Homer Hickam, the NASA engineer. He's in there too, and he responded to Buzz Aldrin, and he said, Buzz, I wholeheartedly agree with you. So if you're on the side of science, if you're on the side of exploration, if you're on the side of adventure, if you're on the side of American greatness, achievement, going into the final frontier, going to Mars even, then perhaps, maybe, I submit, you'd like to be with President Trump this cycle. He's the one, obviously. All right, stay with us. The great one, Mark Levin, is up next, and we will keep tracking this very important election. Fewer than 6 days to go now. May the election end on time.